A small crystal football sits in the Vatican's private library. It is a strange souvenir from a failed diplomatic mission meant to prevent a global rift. The White House and the Holy See are clashing so hard now that people are questioning if religious political diplomacy can even survive this specific breakdown. To see why an American diplomat's gift is trending, you have to look at the direct growing friction between President Donald Trump and Pope Leo XIV. This isn't a simple policy dispute. It is a direct conflict between nationalist administration goals and the worldview of the first US-born Pope. Since January 2006, a major diplomatic rift has developed between the United States and the Holy See. This growing tension has significantly strained long-standing international relations. And this geopolitical tension started because the Vatican openly opposed US military strikes in Venezuela and Iran, alongside the administration's strict border enforcement policies. As the Trump administration ramped up Operation Metro Surge and aggressively cut various social benefits, the Holy See increasingly clashed with Washington's domestic and foreign policies. This friction turned the Vatican from a neutral mediator into a primary critic of the White House, leaving traditional international diplomacy channels without their usual middleman. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited the Vatican on May 7, 2006, attempting a difficult diplomatic move. This high-stakes meeting sought to navigate complex international tensions. The administration failed this critical test while struggling to handle the escalating Iran war, which officially started on February 28, 2006. Diplomats traveled to the Vatican because a diplomatic rift emerged between the United States and the Holy See in January 2026. This friction stemmed from Pope Leo XIV's opposition to U.S. foreign policy and military action in both Venezuela and Iran under President Donald Trump. These high-level visits, including meetings with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, were intended to address the rising tensions between the two nations. This friction exists between the people, not just the politicians in power. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Pope Leo XIV to smooth over a political feud, but a rift persists due to the Pope's opposition to U.S. military action in Venezuela and Iran. By May 2006, reports surfaced that the Pope called Franklin Graham President Donald Trump's puppet during a broadcast on live TV, sparking intense global debate. This conflict now impacts us domestic politics, specifically hitting Chicago's local political landscape and municipal elections. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson took 50 local officials to Rome to meet the Pope. This high-profile international delegation traveled to Italy for the historic meeting. In their private meeting, the mayor called Pope Leo XIV a leader for social justice, migration, and reparations. The meeting highlighted their shared connection, as Johnson noted the comfort of knowing a leader from Chicago can speak to justice. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson hailed Pope Leo XIV as a powerful global ally amid a deepening diplomatic rift between the White House and the Vatican. Trump posted on social media, criticizing the Pope for meeting Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, whom he called useless. This blunt attack targeted the recent high-profile meeting between the religious leader and the city official. The feud is growing, so both sides are planning separate, conflicting events for mid-June, creating a tense atmosphere of competition. Pope Leo XIV will lead a day of prayer and mass at the Chicago White Sox Stadium on June 14. This religious event is scheduled to take place as President Trump's military parade moves through Washington, D.C. As D.C. prepares for military parades, Catholic leaders and followers are focusing their attention on the upcoming events in Chicago. This rift between Trump and Leo XIV creates consequences much larger than their personal feud. As foreign policy is fundamentally changing how the nation engages with other global powers. Trump's strategy relies on unilateral moves and intense economic competition, much like the harsh tariffs he once hit India with during his previous term. Meanwhile, the Vatican is sticking to multilateral diplomacy and international law. This tension is evident in tech, as Pope Leo XIV's call to disarm clashes with Trump's tech-first agenda. Rubio meets Pope. Even the U.S. strategy in Asia is being redefined. With Secretary Rubio starting his India tour, we need to see how New Delhi actually fits into Trump's specific foreign policy. If the U.S. keeps clashing with Vatican doctrine, Washington risks losing its diplomatic leverage and standing among its global allies. The No Kings movement and the Pope's Chicago visit show that the fight over how we govern the world has already begun. This rift reveals a structural tension between the American posture of competitive unilateralism and the Vatican's focus on multilateral diplomacy. The Holy See calls these sacred commitments to human dignity. This core disagreement makes any lasting treaty nearly impossible to sustain. Recent administration comments on border security have made the existing tension even worse. The Pope's intense focus on the profound suffering of migrants clashes directly with current, restrictive domestic policy decisions. For centuries, the Vatican shaped the moral foundations of Western democratic values. Leo XIV has pushed this role into direct conflict with Western hegemony. New tech deregulation policies from the administration leave huge gaps in current oversight laws. Washington pushes for rapid innovation, but the Vatican demands strict new safeguards. This leaves a gap where global rules for new technologies simply aren't forming. This diplomatic fallout is changing Middle East politics. The administration's security strategy frequently overlooks the specific humanitarian concerns raised by the Holy See, often prioritizing military alliances over the humanitarian crises currently unfolding across the region. Many Catholics worldwide now feel their political leaders have completely turned their backs on them. New tariffs and increasing economic pressure add even more tension to this ongoing, escalating trade war. The administration relies on economic pressure to exert power and influence other nations. The Vatican believes this instability directly threatens the survival of people in developing nations. This cycle of mistrust remains hard to break using standard diplomatic channels and negotiations. The administration now prioritizes national interest instead of maintaining our collective security. The Holy See is using global outreach to fight this specific shift in policy. This friction stems from more than policy, it questions what leadership actually means today. One group seeks economic power by taking unilateral, decisive actions. The opposition focuses on reaching agreement and protecting people at high risk. Pope Leo XIV's scheduled Mass at the Chicago White Sox Stadium on June 14 makes this deep-rooted struggle visible to the global stage. This moves high-level diplomatic conflict directly into the middle of American public debate. The world cannot avoid the collision between these two competing visions for our future. This standoff grew because the administration is reshaping trade alliances. These moves clash with the Holy See's actual policy of maintaining multilateral stability through established international frameworks. The Vatican's position is grounded in the primacy of multilateral diplomacy and international law. This clashes with an American strategic posture increasingly oriented toward competitive unilateralism. The administration's recent border security rhetoric deepened the ideological divide. This policy directly contradicts the Pope's stated focus on the sanctity of human migration. Current US climate policy adds friction here. For the Holy See, protecting the environment is a direct moral duty that every nation must follow. No one agrees on how to regulate AI yet. This lack of rules lets tech companies expand without any oversight or legal boundaries. The administration uses unilateral sanctions to force political compliance. The Vatican calls this practice an infringement on the autonomy of developing regions, specifically targeting their sovereign decision-making power. This diplomatic rift stems from Pope Leo XIV's opposition to US foreign policy and military action in Iran under President Trump. This growing friction reduces US diplomatic leverage across Latin America, making it harder to influence local policy. Meanwhile, the Vatican's public critiques give regional opposition a much-needed megaphone to use against current leadership. The administration's recent push for domestic deregulation clashes directly with the Pope's long-standing ethical governance goals. This growing friction makes any future global standard compromises look increasingly unlikely. This friction shows that traditional international mediation is failing. Now, the global systems meant to maintain peace and security are simply not working. The White House and the Vatican are clashing. Watch June 14 to see how these specific diplomatic tensions fundamentally change the current political landscape. Subscribe and hit the bell to catch our next video covering the Chicago Mass and DC Parade aftermath. We are looking at the fallout. Is the Pope right to criticize the Iran war, or is he overstepping? I want to hear your take on this in the comments.